Chapter 14, Resolution. 30 days after Corvin's arrival, the review board convened. Representatives from all 7 cities. The largest formal assembly the fleet had held in living memory. Kess testified for 2 hours. She had spent the 30 days preparing for it, and also doing the actual work, which was happening in the provisionally reopened integration centers, regardless of what the formal process decided. The Dawn Forge efficiency had dropped another 3 points. She told the board everything: the first city, the core, the planet's 3 centuries of attempted communication. She told them about the atmospheric improvements and the cognitive changes, about Torn's smoothed edges and Solas's notebook. She told them about the synchronized movements after the circuit, and about the navigation error in the below, the one the network had offered her as her own judgment. She told them what she could not tell them, whether the integration was a partnership or a very patient form of assimilation that looked like partnership from the inside. The board asked questions for 3 hours. Hard questions, good ones. Vera testified about the technical protocols, and then, unprompted, about her own notebook. Pages of equations she still worked by hand. Load calculations and conduit paths solved without the network, just to prove to herself she still could. She said the notebook was getting thicker, not thinner. She did not know if that was a good sign or a bad one, and she asked the board not to tell her either way. Thane testified about 15 years of hidden integration. Then, about the observation platform. There, the network handed him a tactical certainty that arrived like breathing. It told him exactly how to end a threat before he'd even finished deciding there was one. His hands stayed at his sides. He said he'd let it pass instead. He said it quietly and did not explain further, and no one in the chamber asked him to. Peria testified about her people, the root-bound, about her grandmother's journal, and the cost 8 generations had paid a little at a time, until the paying itself stopped being remarkable. She kept her voice level the entire time. Torn testified last. He brought the numbers. He brought 2 years of suppressed data and the exponential model that Taurus's own engineers had confirmed. He was clear. He was precise. By the second minute, no one in the chamber was checking their own notes anymore. He also brought a notebook. Counselor Marsh observed during the emergency session that my presentation style had changed since integration, Torn said. He was correct. I have become more fluent, more persuasive, and less likely to argue with conclusions that align with the network's priorities. He held up the notebook. Navigator Raventhorn told me about Engineer Celise on Brass. About her practice of recording specific personal memories. Integration tends to generalize individual knowledge into collective awareness. Her notebook counteracts that. I began doing the same. He opened it. Day 3, I noticed I agreed with Vera's implementation timeline without checking her calculations. Pre-integration, I would have checked. I went back and checked. The timeline was correct. The problem is not that the network made me wrong. The problem is that it made checking feel unnecessary. He looked at the board. Day 12, I tried to remember the specific frustration I felt when my second suppressed report disappeared. I remember the fact that I was frustrated. I can describe the frustration accurately, but the feeling itself is less vivid, more historical, as though it happened to a version of me that I have moved past. He closed the notebook. The Dawn Forge data speaks for itself. The integration's benefits are real and measurable and necessary. Its costs are also real and less measurable and potentially permanent. I cannot in good conscience present one without the other. Both are in the numbers. The board deliberated for 6 hours, twice as long as anyone had scheduled for. Kess spent those 6 hours in a corridor outside the chamber, feeling every shift in the room through Sarah's awareness, without being able to make out the words, the way you feel a storm building through a wall before the first drop of rain. Twice the tenor changed sharply enough that she stood up from the bench without meaning to. Once, a support strut near the corridor's far end let out a groan that didn't sound structural until a maintenance crew came running with sealant guns, and it took them 20 minutes to convince themselves the deck wasn't actually failing under the review chamber. Kess watched them work and wondered how much of her own certainty was held together by exactly that kind of 20-minute convincing. Partway through, Sarah's awareness brushed against hers, the network offering a taste of what the board was saying. Not demanding, just an opening, cool water when you're dying of thirst. Kess felt her hand lift toward the wall where the network ran thinnest, where she could slip through if she wanted. She held it there for a count of 5. Then she pulled back. If she couldn't sit with not knowing for 6 hours, she wasn't fit to oversee anyone else's choice. They voted to continue integration on 3 conditions. First, mandatory cognitive autonomy monitoring for all integrated individuals, with baseline assessments conducted before integration and at regular intervals afterward. Second, an independent review of synchronization patterns conducted by non-integrated medical staff. Third, the establishment of a formal record, modeled on Solice's notebook practice, to be maintained by every individual who chose integration. The vote came back 98 to 63. It was a margin that reflected what the situation actually was, genuinely uncertain. The integration centers reopened fleet-wide on a Tuesday. Kess was in the District 7 center when the authorization came through. Sarah felt it through the network 3 seconds before the transmission arrived. Her quiet exhale was the first acknowledgement that it was done. Perea was already on a transport to Brass. Kess had walked her to the docking bay that morning, past the loading manifests and the crews checking cargo webbing. Neither of them said much. Kess thought of star charts drawn in the fog of a window, one fingertip at a time. Of oatmeal bars gone stale in a pack because neither of them could make themselves eat the last one. Small, specific things, the kind she wasn't sure he had anymore. The first city, Kess said. Jace. She didn't finish asking. When I can, Perea said. He said to tell you, the garden is larger than it was. Is he still in there, Jace? The real Jace. Perea looked at her for a long moment. The garden is larger, she said again. What grows from a person is not the person. But it is not nothing. Kess had wanted a better answer than this for 5 years. It had never once come. This one was at least true. Marsh came to her a few days later. He appeared in the doorway of the command center looking smaller than he had in the council chambers. His uniform was the same one from the vote, still creased from the bench he'd sat on for 6 hours. The review board's conclusion, he said. I voted against. I know. I want you to understand that I will continue to vote against any expansion of integration that is not subject to rigorous independent oversight. I believe the cognitive autonomy concerns are not adequately addressed by notebook keeping. I believe the synchronization patterns represent the early stages of something the fleet is not prepared to understand. I believe these concerns are legitimate. Those are legitimate concerns, Kess said. He blinked. You agree with me? I agree that oversight matters. I agree that notebooks are a stopgap, not a solution. I agree that someone should be raising these concerns formally and consistently. She paused. You knew about Torres before the vote, she said. Before any of us did. Marsh's composure cracked, just slightly, and he let it show. Sarah told me the night before Torres arrived. I've known since then. Kess held his gaze. Gas firstry. I could have said something. I didn't, because I wasn't certain it changed what you actually did in that chamber, and I wasn't certain I trusted my own anger about it more than I trusted the vote itself. I never lied to you, Marsh said. I was afraid of this, before I understood why I was afraid. Torres gave me a way to act on it early. I took it. I would take it again. That isn't why I'm telling you now, Kess said. Then why? Marsh asked. Because I'm about to ask you to keep doing exactly that. being afraid, alone, and acting on it before anyone tells you you're allowed to. She didn't look away. I needed you to know I've already seen what that looks like from you. It's not a cleaner version of you I'm asking for. The fleet needs you, counselor, not despite your opposition, because of it. Corvin said you'd say something like that. What did Corvin say? He said the frightened ones need a reason to stop being frightened. The stupid ones just need to be outvoted. Marsh looked at the atmospheric displays. Better than they'd been in years. I've been watching the District 12 readings for 30 days. Waiting for the improvement to fail. It didn't fail. No, I also watched Torn's notebook entries. He shared them with me at my request. Marsh's voice changed, less prepared, more particular. Day 19, he wrote. I tried to disagree with Vera about the conversion timeline for District 9. The disagreement felt trivial before I finished forming it. I made myself finish forming it anyway. She was right. But the act of disagreeing felt like swimming upstream. I don't know if that sensation is the network discouraging unnecessary conflict or discouraging necessary conflict. I can't tell from inside. Marsh looked at her. That's the most important sentence anyone has produced in this entire process. And it came from a man who had to fight his own integration to write it. I know, Kess said. What would you need from me? He asked. You don't need my support, and I'm not offering it. What would you need from my opposition to make this work? It was such a good question that Kess had to stop and think about it. Stay specific, she said. Document what you see. Don't let the cognitive autonomy monitoring become routine. Push back when the synchronization patterns change. And when someone who's integrated tells you they're fine, don't believe them automatically. Make them prove it. The way Torn proved it, Marsh said. The way Torn is trying to prove it, Cass corrected. He's fighting for it. That fight is the thing I need you to protect. Then understand this, Marsh said. The first time Torn's notebook stops showing entries like Day 19 and starts showing only clean confidence, I am going to say so publicly. Whether or not you think it will hurt him. I am not going to protect your friend from what he is becoming in order to spare your feelings. I know, Kess said. Marsh looked at her for a long moment, then he nodded. It was an acknowledgement, not an agreement. He left, without further ceremony. The fleet had 11 months left before the Dawn Forges reached critical failure. 11 months of improvements and costs, accumulated side by side. 11 months of notebooks and monitoring and the specific, exhausting work of choosing transformation while trying to stay human inside it. Kess thought it was enough. She hoped the thinking was hers.
Chapter Guild, Stories for Your Mind.